Superintendent of Valley Central School District, and I want to start this evening by thanking Mary Ann Sarator for putting this event together, and Patty Bear also worked on this. What a job they did to get breaking the cycle, not only here, but also to get people to come out this evening. And, you know, we do a lot of events for our students during the school day, but we feel that it's very, very important to do, and we started to really make an effort to do this last year, to have some events in the evening. And when we thought about some of the things we wanted to do, I think the most important thing to us this year, when we talk about initiatives, obviously state tests are always at the forefront of the start of a new school year, but we wanted this year to be about mental health, because when we look at the headlines and what's dominating them besides politics and society, you know, it's these headlines that are hard for us to look at. And you know, I was going to look up some statistics to share tonight, and I started thinking about, you know, how many opioid deaths, how many mass shootings, how many teenage suicides, and you know, the answer is too many. Yeah, we don't need the numbers to tell us that. We see it every day, and we ask ourselves, what can we do to solve this, or to help, and how do you make a difference? And I think the way it starts is by what we're doing tonight, that we come out and we try together to understand. And one thing that personally for me that I found is the more I learn, the more I realize that I still need to understand. And I think that this is a really, really important thing, that you're here, that you know, you see all these organizations that spring up, grassroots efforts in the community, things that are happening in the schools, but you realize that all of us are sharing this together, and that's how we solve it. We solve this by working together. So tonight, you know, it's a message of forgiveness and the power of that, and you're going to hear three very, very powerful speakers, and I want to extend or introduce you to our Master of Ceremonies tonight, who is a member of not only our local police department, but also our student resource officer here in the high school at Valley Central. He does so much for our students, but our police department in general has been behind us and helping us in our community, and they're a part of this effort as well. And that's really what tonight is about. Yes, the Valley Central community, but all of Orange County. And I thank everybody for being here. Mary Ann's going to speak to you a little later, but right now I'd like to introduce to you Officer Andre Giglovich. He's going to be our Master of Ceremonies for this evening.
I'm going to see if I can do this. Can everybody hear me in the back or no? All right, I'm not fond of microphones nor speeches, but basically, thanks, Mike. Everything I had written down, Mr. Belrosa has already relayed to you, and that's fantastic. All right, again, this assembly is about different ways of handling violence, the results of violence, and violence isn't always, you know, physical, it can be mental as well. I've had the privilege of speaking with some of the speakers tonight, and I think this evening, some of you will find tears, some of you may find smiles, some of you may find someplace in the middle. But I will not speak for them, I'll speak for myself when I say, I truly hope that we all come out of here with a better sense of self-awareness and be able to look at ourselves and our families and kind of understand that as individuals and as families. So, without further ado, I will introduce, I'm sorry, sir. The gentleman with two words. Mark.
Well, thank you so much for coming out here, parents of Valley Central. And I think we can measure quality of an audience many different ways. We can measure numbers, but we can also measure hearts and minds that want to be here and want to make a difference. And I think that's really important. So Break the Cycle started back in 1999 following the shooting at Columbine High School, when Christoph Arnold featured up here, Pastor Christoph Arnold and Stephen McDonald started talking about what can be done to solve the school violence issues. And it really comes down to each child and each person and the things harbor in your heart and are unable to let go of. So we hope that the stories you hear tonight, each one's different, but it all comes back to forgiveness. So things happen to us every day, and we can let go of them, or we can bury them. And things buried have a way of coming out at some point. So Break the Cycle speaks in schools a couple of times a week in the tri-state area, Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, middle schools and high schools. We sometimes get into other things like colleges and summer programs. But the attempt always is to reach one child. And if we can do that, we feel like our work is well done and we're well rewarded for it. So thanks for having us, and Pat and Anne, we're going to start.
I'd like to start by commending all of you for coming out tonight. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Had this happened 14 years ago when I had my 3 children at home, all safe, and an event like this would be offered, I would say, like, I don't need to go. We don't have a problem. And little did I know that my son was hurting, that depression was running rampant, and that I would lose him. So I commend you for coming and being open enough to take this information, because had I attended one of these, maybe my eyes would have been open. I worried about everything. Drugs, teen pregnancy, drinking and driving. Suicide wasn't even in my thought process. Although my husband was a health teacher and taught suicide prevention, and a head football coach at Monroe Woodbury, saw thousands of boys go through his doors, what did we not see? We didn't see that he was struggling. We didn't see that he was spiraling out of control. I'm on the board for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and I've taken many courses, and one of the courses that I took was Safe Talk Training. And Safe Talk Training is to be able to see someone who's hurting and be brave enough to go up to them and say, "Are you okay?" That could be the difference between them staying here or them leaving. That one gesture of caring, that one gesture of love, can change the path that someone takes. When I go to schools and speak, we tell the kids, you're the gatekeepers, you hold the key, because in most instances, friends tell friends. And I tell them, you can be a hero, and you don't even know it, by just telling someone that you care. Are you okay? And then if they say they're not, please be brave enough, courageous enough to go and tell a teacher. Ask that child who's your safe person and take that child to a safe place. I want to go back and just tell you where I come from. I grew up in Westchester. I'm the youngest of 3 girls. And down the street from me lived this little boy. And he liked me. And he left a box of Heart chocolates on Valentine's Day. And the only reason I knew that it was him was I saw him run past my window, and in the box was a letter, and it said, "I want to marry you." And I thought, isn't that sweet? And as we grew older, he became the bully before we knew what bullies were. No longer did he give me hot chocolates. He bombed me with snowballs and crab apples and made fun of me at every chance he could. I would play with him on the street, or when the kids played, I'd sit on the sidelines because I didn't want to be made fun of. But as we got older, we became the best of friends. We would both graduate. He would go on to college and graduate in May, and in August we were married. That man stands beside me right now. Why do I tell you that? I usually say to the kids when we go speak at schools, because you could be sitting next to your future husband or wife. I think that's so funny. But why I tell you that is because most parents don't survive the loss of a child. It is that painful. I take that we grew up together, that we had a solid foundation, and that was part of the glue that kept us together. Now Pat's story. My husband came home one day and he said, "I want to move to Monroe." We were living in Minnesink. My kids went to Minnesink. My oldest daughter graduated from Minnesink, attended Fordham University. My 10th grader, Nicole, was still still in Minnesing. Patrick was in the 8th grade. I was happy in Minnesing. When he came home and said he wanted the kids to go to Monroe, I had a mother's gut feeling. Listen to it, it's as sharp as your brain. And it told me, no way. And I said to him, they're all gonna watch him. They're all gonna wanna see what kind of a boy you have. Too much pressure for Patrick, please, I don't wanna go. I gave in. Why? Because Patrick wanted to go. And he succeeded. Section 9 champion wrestler. Habitat for Humanity, student government, honor student, popular, good looking, I'm his mom prejudice. Don't ever judge a book by its cover. You never know what someone's carrying. Everyone thought he had it all. We thought he was going to be so successful because he got the job done. He didn't wait to do that report, he got it done immediately. What did I think when I look back? Yes, there were moments where he was, oh mom, leave me alone, don't bug me, I got it. And I thought, okay, he's 16 and he's bridging from adolescence into adulthood, just normal 16-year-old behavior. He told no one what he was going through. Depression ran rampant in our family. It was rearing its ugly head with my son, and I only found that out after I lost him. And so this is his story. Wrestling had ended, he wasn't feeling good. I took him to the doctors, and he gave his first invitation, a way of saying what's wrong with you, but not actually coming out and saying, you're beating around the bush. Nobody's gonna get it. Told the doctor I'm not sleeping. Huge invitation. We would find out he had full-blown mono. When you have mono, all you do is sleep. The invitation for me came on the car ride home, when he jumped out of my running car, because I didn't stop at Taco Bell. And I looked at him, I said, what is wrong with you? Screamed at him, get back in the car. What he was trying to say, his mom was spiraling out of control and I don't know why. I need help. But he said nothing. So that was the first template building. And then he was dating a girl from Monroe, but he had a very good friend that was like a sister in Minnesing, and she said, would you go to the prom with me? He asked his girlfriend, is it okay if I go? And she said, yeah, sure. But it wasn't, because she cheated on him. And he came home disappointed and hurt, and he said, Mom, why didn't she just tell me she didn't want to go out anymore? I said, Pat, that's how we learn people's character. She wasn't right for you. The templates are building. He didn't go to his grandmother's for Mother's Day that year because he was still sick with the mono, but he asked me to buy his grandmother flowers and his aunts. He was saying goodbye. And then he wanted to drive after 9, typical 16-year-old. I said, it's the law, you can't. He said, but Mom, everybody does. And I said, I don't care what everybody does, Pat. It's the law, you can't. Unbeknownst to me, he was at that party. And he was not drinking, he wasn't speeding when he got stopped. But there was a cop waiting at the edge of that street because he got a call that the house was filled with kids and they stopped him. And they issued him a ticket when they found out he was out after 9. That weighed heavy. He knew he would probably have to go to court, definitely go to court, and maybe have his license taken away. And then this one day, when he was speeding on the upper parking lot, just as his father was pulling out of Monroe Woodbury, my husband saw him and followed him and did what any parent would do, get home. Came home, he threw the keys in the car, and he went to his aunt's house that lived around the block. She would return him back home that evening, and we were waiting. When he walked in the door, my husband said, my worst fear is you wrap that car around a telephone pole and the cops come and tell me that you're dead. He said, if anything ever happened to you, I wouldn't be able to live with myself. I don't know what's a stronger way of telling your child how much you love them. My Pat was mad. He didn't hear it like that. My husband said to me, Anne Marie, you speak to him, I'm going to bed. I sat face to face with him and I said, Pat, do you realize the responsibility you have behind the wheel of that car? He said, Dad's going to take my car away. I said, I'm not discussing the car. I'm discussing you being responsible. My biggest regret. You'll one thing that I ask for forgiveness every day over is that I didn't tell him I had a speeding ticket that week. Because that would have changed the way our conversation went. He would have said, Mom, you make mistakes. You're damn right I do, but I don't want you to make it. And you get it. How horrible, not horrible, but how difficult it is to be a parent. You want the best for them. You want them to make the right decisions. But I found out through this journey, telling them the mistakes that you make are probably the best way to parent. I made his favorite dinner that night, and I gave him his $50 rebate for his phone. And he went to bed. He was on the phone with an old friend, and he said to this old friend, "You're never going to see me again." Huge invitation. They were only 15. They didn't know. Get up the next morning. I asked him if he was going to school with his father, and he said, "No, I'm going, my buddies are going to pick me up." I knew he was mad, but I thank God every day that I told him, "Please don't be mad at Daddy. Daddy loves you more than he loves himself." He went downstairs and he posted "bye" on the computer. Just bye. And the irony of my story is that Pat had befriended someone that nobody wanted to be friends with. He talked him out of suicide. This boy was clinically depressed. You see, when you're hurting, you know what it feels like, and you don't want to see anybody else hurt. He took him into his fold of friends at the really ridicule from his other buddies. But he didn't care. He said, "He's here," and he stayed. If you don't want him, you don't want me. Got a milkshake thrown on him at lunch, but had a heads up that it was coming. So he picked the kid up and threw him on the lunch table before he could get hit with the milkshake and got suspended. We knew why he did it, and he didn't get in trouble for it. We said we're proud of him for sticking up for somebody that nobody else wants to be friends with. That boy heard or saw that bye, but he didn't know. Pat would leave the house that day, get into his friend's truck, go to the bottom of our road and say, "Stop, this is as far as I'm going." And the friend said, "Well, where are you going?" He said, "I'm taking my car and I'm going to Colorado." He said, "Pat, you're going to get in more trouble for that." He said, "No, that's what I'm doing." But before he left that car, he gave his friend the $50 invitation. Ask me why I'm giving you that. You know I need that and more if I'm going to Colorado. Didn't ask. Pat would get out of the truck, take a rope out of the back of his friend's pickup, and end his life in the woods across from our home. I was at work that evening. My husband called me and said, "Pat never showed up at the weight room. He wasn't in school today. Do you know where he is?" And I said, "No." I had called him. He wasn't picking up his phone. And at this moment that I hung up the phone, 2 state troopers with purple ties came in. And I looked at them and I said, "Is it my son?" He called me outside. I don't remember how they said it. I just remember beating that poor man with my fist and saying, "Somebody wake me up. Please, somebody wake me up."
When I walked through the front doors of the building tonight, I had forgotten the memories that I had here at Valley Central. Pat had wrestled in that gym since the time he was 7 years old. He wrestled with and against the Ruggierellos, the Scotts, and some of the greatest wrestlers that were here. It forged some great relationships with the people from Valley Central. And when Pat died, they were very supportive in a number of ways. And I just want people to know how appreciative the family was for the support that came here many years ago. 14 years ago, Pat took his life. It took me 14 years to get the courage to come here and speak. I let my wife do it. I couldn't tell the story. Unfortunately, she had a heart attack back in April, and she couldn't speak, and she looked at me and she said, "Who's going to tell the story?" And of course, I was the last person that wanted to do that. But I felt I had to. So I've been doing this for probably about 3 months now. and we've been doing a lot less here together. So there will be some parts of my story, and the hill that I climb is very, very steep and very, very difficult. So if I break down, don't worry about it, because it happens with certain things. There are certain things that happen in your life that just never go away. The scars heal, but they're always there. So I never forget the time or the date. On May 19th at 4:15, I looked up at the clock. I was in my office at Marlon Woodbury High School. I'd let the football team go after their lifting. And I hear footsteps coming down the long hallways, and I hear the clicking of the shoes, and I go out in the hallway to take a look, and there are two large state police officers with a detective walking down the hallway. And as I had done for 30 years, jokingly, I said, "Fellas, which one of my football players are you looking for now?" They said, "Coach, we want you." And in 3 seconds, my life was over, or I thought it was over. They couldn't even tell me the truth, because they knew how upset I was. They said it was a car accident. I didn't find out he did that until I got home. I found it from my wife. I didn't know what to do, so simply I went to my room, and I curled up on the bed for 2 weeks like a 6-month-old, and I cried and I cried and I cried. I shut out every single person who tried to help me, who came to that door. I shut my family out too. I just didn't know what to do. I was devastated. I didn't think it get any worse. One day I just walked out to get the mail, and there was a letter from a student. He said, "Dear Coach Delisa, Mr. Delisa, you do not know me, but I have to tell you." She said, "I was at the high school in Marlon Woodbury, and I was sick of the bullying. It wasn't the boys, it was the girls. Every single day, they would say something, do something, knock my books down, and today was no different. They knocked my books down, they laughed, they kicked them all over the floor, other people came by, laughed at me, ridiculed me, and I said, when I go home, that's it. That's it, I'm not staying in this world anymore." I looked up, and there was Patrick, saying, "Are you okay?" And of course I lied to him and said, "I'm fine." He picked up every single book, he walked into class, and he said, "Everything will be okay." And I said, "Yeah." And I lied to him again because I wasn't coming back anywhere after school, that was it. I walked into the cafeteria, and Patrick found me. I don't know how, but 1,000 kids having lunch. He called me over to the table, sat me down, and acted like I was the best friend in the world. It was the greatest day I've had in months. And I want you to know, he saved my life. One day I went out, I left my cell phone at home. Nobody was there. My family come home, my 2 daughters, and they couldn't find me. I went over to the school. I had keys. I went into the school this Sunday to work out and do some things. And they didn't know where I was. They thought the worst, that I'd taken my life. I walked in the door unbeknownst to the family, and I could hear my youngest daughter say, "He doesn't care about us. He only cared about Patrick." And I thought Patrick's death was going to destroy me. And when I heard that, I knew I could not destroy the lives of other people because he had made that choice. So I said, "I'm going to school tomorrow. Get my clothes ready." And I thought it would be easy. I got there, the bell rang, I walked to class, and every single person knew who I was and knew what had happened. Everybody stopped talking in the hallway from one to the next. My classroom was about a half a mile away, 2 different floors. And when people were talking and they saw me, I could hear them say, "Who's Coach Delisa?" And they got a forearm in the chest shot. It was the most difficult and eerie moment in my life. And I got to my classroom as fast as I could. And didn't realize when I got there I was trapped. And so were 30 kids, 5 times a day. To sit there and watch me struggle, in pain, crying, whatever. None of them complained. None of them asked to drop the class. None of them went to administrator. They stood with me. And I said, if they can do that, then I can get through this. And they were a source of inspiration. Because I had to make a real big decision, and I had to make it simple. The athletic director came to me and said, "Pat, are you coming back to be the head football coach?" "I think you should." And I said, "Yes." because I thought I could do it. And there was the biggest challenge I faced beyond school, beyond anything. Because after the games, whether it's on a football field, a soccer field, swimming, whatever, after you lose or after you win, your parents come down. And typically at a football field, at least years ago, most of the boys would tell their moms, don't you ever come down to the field, no matter what, even if I'm hurt. So primarily it was dads hugging their kids. And it destroyed me. I was ready to just quit right there, but I had some very close friends who got me through everything. One day, one of Pat's closest friends said to me, Coach, I got a favor. I said, what is it? He said, this is my last year as a senior. My dad has never come to watch me play football ever. I talk to him, he yells at me, he screams. One time he got so mad, he slashed the tires on my car, so I couldn't get to practice the next day. I said, okay, unusual request, but I'll do it. And I did it for two reasons. Number one, because my dad, I would beg him to come and watch me play. And he never showed up until I was a junior in college playing football, 21 years old. And secondly, I couldn't fathom that a father would not want to come and spend time with his son. Because I would give anything to see or talk to Patrick for 2 seconds. So I went there and I talked to him. He was very, very nice and respectful. He said, thank you, Coach. He said, thank you for taking care of my son. And that was it. First game came, I looked around after the game, saw Pat's friend walking away by himself. Dad didn't show up. He didn't show up for week 2 either. So Chris and I, our ritual was to walk together to the locker room and to the bus. Never said a word to each other, we knew each other's pain. And it went on week after week after week. And we became closer, but more somber about what was going on. We were lucky that year. We won every single game. Went to the Carrier Dome, Syracuse University, New York State Championships, and we won. And after all the accolades after the game, I looked for Chris. Couldn't find him. And I looked harder. He was with his dad on the field, hugging me. He was so far away, but we saw each other. And he went like this, smiled, and he mouthed the word thank you. I knew my life would never, ever be the same again. I walked the whole length of that football field at the Dome. I remember 118 yards, thinking to myself till I got to that locker room, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? I was a health teacher. I taught kids. I taught his friends what to do in case of a suicide. I don't blame him, because I was his dad. I see one thing, not one thing. Today, I listen to the news. I know that suicide for our young people right now here is the second leading cause of death. Every 2 hours, a teen loses their life. To every administrator, every single parent, every coach, every extracurricular person, every counselor that deals with a kid, I want to tell you right now, these kids are under more pressure than any adult walking around right now. More pressure than you were ever when you were in school. And you need to understand that. I look at the news today, and I see that as a nation, our lifespan drops to 78.6%. We're ranked 29th in the country, or in the world. And they attribute it to 2 things. Middle America, adults, losing hope in our culture. A society that is failing to meet their needs economically and spiritually. Opioids and the suicide rate are out of control in Middle America, 25 years old to 52. So the same things that are affecting our young people are now affecting us as a nation. But when Pat was alive, I never saw that. I was focused on other things. See, to me, being a real success, I know I was a decent parent, I was a good coach, but to me, it was to win football games and win a state championship. And to do that, I spent a lot of time with football, a lot of time with other people's kids, and a lot of time away from the family. And I know I was a good coach, and I'm not bragging. Because every day, just like tonight, I walk down my hallway at my house, and I go by his room. And in that room sits a ring, a nice gold ring with diamonds, big red ruby in the middle, in a black velvet box on his desk that I can't even open and look at. It's a state championship ring because it reminds me of what I lost and what I got in return. My wife and my friends say, "Why do you do that?" I said, "It helps me remember. Remember what? To forgive myself." But Pat didn't do anything. It was his choice. I said, "You don't understand." I said, "It helps me remember and forgive myself because I should have been a better dad to Pat instead of his coach. A mistake that I felt I made that I still fight today." And that's why I come here and talk. Because I want somebody here, a parent, a friend, whatever, to be the voice Patrick never had. I taught for 35 years. Friends are so important, as my wife said. Never once did a student come up to me or a player and say, "Coach DeLiso, I'm thinking of taking my life." 100% of the time, every single time, it was a friend that saved it. As my wife said, you're the gatekeepers. You've got the key. You've got the power. So now, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, if you come forward and say, "I need some help," or you tell somebody your friend needs help, don't wait. Who cares if you have to call 911 or your friend's never going to talk to you again? Do something. Because if you do one thing between now and whenever, I'll have realized that Patrick had not died in vain. I thank you for listening to our story, and I wish all of you a happy, healthy, and safe holidays. Thank you.
It's somewhat difficult after listening to Coach and his beautiful wife speak about their experience, but as the assembly moves on, it's my privilege to introduce Randy Hilder, correct? I'm a referee, I have here on the phone.
Oh, really?
I have
Oh, yeah, you probably do.
I have a connection.
He knows my uncle. My uncle's a basketball coach and he has a really bad temper. I'm Randy, and it's great to be here tonight. It was a little over 3.5 years ago. It was a summer Saturday afternoon, and I was sitting on my bed. I had just asked somebody if they wanted off that night. I was waitressing. And they brought me back and they said, "Yeah, I'd love off." So I decided that I was going to go to work that night. And I was getting ready, and my boyfriend's phone rang. And when the phone rang, I noticed that it was my father's phone number. And I thought, why is he calling you? And so I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey, Dad." And he said, "Where's Claude? I need to talk to him." I said, "Well, he's right here. What's wrong? Is everything okay?" I could hear it in his voice. And he said, "Just put him on the phone." And when I put him on the phone, next thing I know, clothes were being thrown in the air into a bag. And he got off the phone and he said, "Come on, I gotta take you to Kingston." And I said, "But I gotta work tonight." And he was like, "No, you're not going to work. We have to go to Kingston." I had no idea what happened. I have a 103-year-old great-grandmother, and I thought instantly that something had happened to her. So I drove to Kingston. It was the longest ride ever. I was coming from Albany. And when I got to my grandmother's house, I walked inside, I saw my great-grandmother sitting there, and I realized the only person that wasn't there was my brother Ryan. And I fell to my knees and I begged my mom and dad that it wasn't real. My brother had been struggling with addiction for years, in and out of rehab facilities. He had overdosed a couple times, and this time was his last. When I was young, I grew up in a house with both my mom and dad under the same roof, and many people would say that we were blessed, and we were. Not a lot of kids have the privilege of having both mom and dad. My parents did everything to give us opportunities in our life, They put us in sports. They let us, try anything that we wanted to. And if we fell in love with it, they motivated us to move on with it. At a very young age, I was flipping all around my house, jumping on the couches, doing forward rolls. And my parents said, we gotta put her in gymnastics. She's gotta get that energy out. They put me in gymnastics at 3 years old, and I fell in love with it and was competing and on a team by the age of 5. When I was about 8 years old, I found a Russian gymnastics coach up in Albany who trained girls to go to nationals. And he came to me and he said, I see a lot of potential in you, you should come to my gym. And I fought with my parents to take me to his gym, and they thought, you know what, we'll give you this opportunity. So every day after school, when I was 8 years old, I would get in the car, I'd drive an hour to Albany, I'd do my homework on the way up, I'd train for 3.5 hours, I'd get back in the car, I'd eat my dinner, go home, shower, go to sleep, wake up the next day and do it all over again. I had a very structured life. I had no free time, but this is what I wanted. My brother Ryan, on the other hand, he was not competitive like me. He never wanted to compete with anything. And he enjoyed recreational sports. He enjoyed laid-back type of atmospheres. And he started, skateboarding, snowboarding. He played baseball, he played basketball, but he just wasn't really like me when it came to sports. Ryan had a lot more free time on his hands, and in the 8th grade, he was feeling a bunch of pressure. You see, Ryan could walk into this room right now and he could make every single one of you laugh, smile on your worst day. He had a great sense of humor and everyone loved him, but he didn't feel like that. In the 8th grade, Ryan started looking for new friends. He started feeling like he needed to fit in with more people. And when he was looking for these new friends, he started surrounding himself by older kids. And these older kids were doing things that you couldn't imagine an 8th grader doing. They were smoking, they were drinking. And Ryan was a homebody. So all of a sudden in the 8th grade, my brother started, saying, Mom, Dad, I want to go sleep at this one's house, or I want to go here. And they thought, this is great, he's being social, this is good, this is what he needs. He's coming out of his shell. And they sent him. And what they didn't know is that when he was going to these other friends' house, they were getting away with things that he wouldn't get away with at our house. So in the 8th grade, he started smoking and drinking. Now me, I was in the 6th grade, and I looked up to him. And I was very, focused on my sport and my school. But I looked up to him, and I started realizing that he was smoking. And I was like, Mom and Dad tell us not to do these types of things. What are you doing? And he kind of did one of these to me. He was like, oh, Mom and Dad have to say that. As parents, they have to say that. There's nothing wrong with it. And, I just kind of let it go. I didn't want to be the annoying, nagging little sister, and I wanted him to respect me. So, moving forward in the 8th grade, I went to California. I competed in a national competition. I came home. I went to the doctors, and I was having a couple of problems with my wrists and my knees. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, well, you have a break in your wrist, and if you want to walk when you're 25, you might want to stop doing gymnastics, because my knees were really bad. So I quit, and I was angry, and now I had all this free time on my hands. All my friends were still practicing at the gym, and I was starting to look for new friends. And I migrated towards my brother and his friends. I wanted to be in with the older kids. So in the 8th grade, I was smoking, I was drinking, I was doing everything that Ryan was doing in the 8th grade, only I think I was doing more. I went through high school, I got kicked out of my only prom for drinking, I got arrested multiple times, I became my friends' parents' worst nightmare. I was the kid that they didn't want around their kids. I lost a lot of good friends. My brother graduated high school. He went off to college in SUNY Plattsburgh. And I went up to visit him one day, and his girlfriend came up to me and she said, "Hey, we're all going to take these pills tonight." And they were Xanax. I didn't know what it was. I just thought, okay, why not? I had already done other drugs, so why not? I took the pill that night. I woke up the next day and I didn't remember anything that happened the night before, but I didn't say anything. I went home. My parents asked me how my trip was. I said it was great. I ignored the fact that my brother was probably spiraling out of control. I didn't know. 3.5 years into college, my brother called my mom and he said, "I'm going to move to North Carolina. I'm going to drop out of school." Ryan was a straight A student. This was odd. And he said, "I just need to get out of here. I'm going to North Carolina." So we went down to North Carolina. We were unaware of how bad his addiction was. We were unaware that he even had an addiction problem. And when he went down to North Carolina, he was looking for any pill that he could get his hands on to feed his addiction. And one day he went looking for, an Oxycontin, and it was either too expensive or he couldn't get his hands on it, and the kid said to him, "I got something that'll feed your withdrawal symptoms, And he said, "Here, it's heroin." And now, when I was young, I thought heroin was for a junkie in an alleyway. I'm going to be straight honest with you. I thought heroin will never affect my family. My mom's a school principal, my dad's a business owner. Heroin tore my family apart. Ryan tried heroin and he said, no, I don't do needles. And the kid said to him, "You don't need to. There's other ways you can ingest it or whatever." And so we did it, and at that very moment, my brother's life was totally out of control. He came home, he couldn't afford North Carolina. My parents wouldn't let him live with them because they didn't really know what was going on. And my mom, as a school principal, she said, "You get in trouble at my house for anything, I'm losing my whole career." Ryan told my mom that he was struggling with a heroin addiction, and he walked in the backyard with her, and her heart just dropped. And he said, "Mom, I need help." And you see, back in 2013, when he was really struggling and wanted help, there were all these insurance boundaries. We couldn't get him into a rehab. It was frustrating. And finally, my mom took him off her insurance through the state, put him on Medicaid, and got him into a rehab facility. He went into the rehab facility, he came out. One thing that he did was he thought that he could do it on his own. He thought that he could go around the same friends and say no. He thought he could pick up another beer, he thought he could smoke another joint, and that it would never lead back to the pills or the heroin. And every time he thought that, he was wrong. In 2013, my brother's girlfriend found him in the bathroom, overdosed. And she called the ambulance, the 911, and the ambulance came and they revived him. And it gave me 2 more years with my brother. For the next 2 years, he went in and out of many rehab facilities. His last time, he went for 10.5 months. He got out, he came up to Albany where I was living. He spent a weekend with me, he was doing great. I talked to him on the phone about a week later, and he said, "I'm scared. There's this voice inside my head and it's telling me that I need these drugs." And I assured him that, "You're okay, you can do this." And we were like best friends, so we hung up the phone. I said, "I love you." He said, "I love you too." And it was the last time I heard his voice. 15 days after he got out of the rehab, he died of a heroin overdose. And that's how powerful it is. So breaking the cycle speaks about forgiveness. And when I first came on with Breaking the Cycle, I didn't really know where forgiveness played a part in my story. But one thing that I was able to move on from was the fact that I was guilty. I did drugs with my brother. I played into his addiction. I enabled him. I laughed at him when he was drunk and high because he was funny. And I lived with this emotion of guilt that just ate me alive. And the minute that I started forgiving myself, I started growing. I started being able to live my life again. I started to understand that things will never be the same, but they can get better. And this is the new normal. So, one thing I want to say, and this is just because nobody ever really knew what to do when we were struggling, and there's this raging drug epidemic that's attacking my generation. I've lost many friends. If you have a loved one that's struggling, and there's many parents here, and I think we're all affected by addiction, love them. Because the one thing is that we kind of gave up on Ryan. We didn't know what to do when we thought that he was intentionally hurting us. Love your loved ones that are struggling. I found a letter about 2 months ago. My aunt brought me some of his stuff, and it's titled Dear Drugs and Alcohol. And I want to read this to you because maybe you'll get an understanding of what drugs really do to somebody. Dear drugs and alcohol, this is it. This fatal attraction has been going on for far too long. It's either you or me, and I'm not done yet. Over time, you've sucked all the life out of me, and it's sad. I went to school for management, and I can't even manage myself. Over time, I have wasted so much money just to see you, and when the money wasn't going to you, it was going to fix the wrongs that you've caused. Before I met you, I was never getting in trouble and well-behaved, but ever since we have started hanging out, I've been in nothing but trouble. You've caused me to get arrested over and over again at least 10 times that I can remember. You put me in the hospital numerous times and left my body with scars that will never fully heal, both physically and mentally. And if it wasn't for the help of others, I would not even be here. 10 years ago, I was so full of life and people enjoyed being around me. But over the years, you have caused me to seclude myself from everyone that cares about me. I've made promises that I couldn't keep and was forced to go behind the backs of those who cared the most. He never finished, I'm assuming, but that just gives you an idea of what somebody is actually struggling. No addict wants to be an addict. Ryan did not want to live in his addiction. So if you know somebody that's struggling, love them, help them, encourage them, because there is hope out there. I know many people that have recovered. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charlie Williams, and it's an honor and a blessing to be here tonight. Not unlike Coach, coming through these doors, I had some flashbacks. My daughters all played volleyball from Cornwall, so I was in your gym a few times. We've been at middle school for this assembly. The officer that made the two-word introduction, we worked together 30 years ago in New York City. Russ, the AP from the middle school, personal friend through a relationship that I'm in. We normally talk to kids, so it's a real honor to actually talk to their parents. So many times the kids come up to us say, yeah, I'm having a problem with my mom or my dad, or they're having a problem with their mom or their dad, and we encourage them to take the book and take it home and share the message. So now we get to do it directly to you. So thanks for having us. There's lots of murals behind me. Some people you'll recognize. Tonight you met Ryan and Pat and Trick. But second from the end over there is Detective Stephen McDonald. I was working in the Bronx when he was shot in Central Park in 1986. There's something odd about that mural. And I like to ask the students when we do this assembly, if someone can tell me what is odd about that mural. Anyone? Anyone? Right? He was paralyzed from the neck down, so he has a respirator that did the breathing for him, that's the thing in his neck, 2 little tubes by his mouth, allowed him to direct the wheelchair around, back and forward. There's something else. The gone but not forgotten, that sweater was 9/11 in remembrance.
Smile.
Thank you, said that. Somebody's cheating. He's smiling. Stephen McDonald, shot paralyzed from the neck down in 1986, never held his only son Connor. His wife Patty Ann was pregnant when he was shot. Never felt or felt the touch of his hand on that baby soft skin. That skin. Never played baseball. Never taught his kid how to ride a bike. Confined to a wheelchair, can only move his head. What the heck is he smiling about? So when I first heard this assembly in 2002, Stephen was one of the speakers. And 16 years later, they haven't gotten rid of it yet. They say I'm the poster child for forgiveness. Ask any member of the team, and I'll tell you it's true. It's an understatement. Yeah, give it up for your head. Gentleman right here worked with him in the town. So I left that assembly that day and I said to myself, I want what he has. I don't understand it. I don't know what it is. I don't know how he does it. But I want it. See, because I grew up on Long Island, both of my parents were home. I don't know why they stayed together, because it was clear they hated one another. My mother was a raging alcoholic. She didn't drink some of the time, she drank all the time. Very rarely had a job. When she did, guarantee you she drank there, because she never had that job for very long. My dad worked the odd shifts, the 4 to 12s and the overnights, to get a couple percentage extra bump in his salary to help make ends meet. It was like my birthday, if I could go to the refrigerator and get a soda. It was like Christmas, if I could go to the freezer and get ice cream. But all my mother had to do was walk into the kitchen, make a right, go to the china closet, bottom right-hand corner, and there was always that drink for her. I mean, growing up, if anyone ever would have told me I would have been a police officer for 24 years, retiring as the chief of police of a local police agency, and then if someone told me, oh yeah, you're going to work for New York Military Academy for 7 years and have that great experience, and now someone would say, oh yeah, by the way, you're going to be in charge of like 100 people at this startup tech company in Philadelphia, I would have said you're out of your mind. See, because growing up in the household that I did, it was clear to me that my path was set, the mold was, the cast was dyed, it was set, I would never be anything. I mean, I knew it as a young age that nothing that I did would ever amount to anything. My whole life has been like there's a bungee cord attached to my back. There would be some progress, and then I get pulled back instead, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. My whole life I've struggled with that. And it was simple to me. I mean, I understood at a very young age that I